We are presenting Chapter 6.6, Multiplication and Division of Complex Numbers.
We use two main equations in this section. The first one is to multiply complex numbers. So to get z1 times z2, you multiply the two r's, add the two cosines, and then add the two sines to simplify the entire equation.
The second equation is for division. To find z1 over z2, you divide r1 by r2, subtract cosine 2 from cosine 1, and add that with sine 2 minus sine 1.
Now we're going to walk you through a really easy example of how to both multiply and divide complex numbers. We have z1, 6 times the cosine of 160 plus I sine 160, and z2, 2 times the cosine of 80 degrees plus I sine of 80 degrees. These two numbers represent r. The cosine of 160 represents the cosine of theta 1. The cosine of 80 represents the cosine of theta 2. I sine 160 represents the sine of theta 1, and I sine 80 degrees represents the sine of theta 2. First, we're going to multiply z1 and z2. You start by multiplying r's together, which in this case are 6 and 2. Then you take the cosine of theta 1 and the cosine of theta 2, 160 and 80, and add them. And you take the sine of theta 1 and the sine of theta 2 and add those. Once you have that simplified, you end with 12 times the cosine of 240 degrees plus I sine of 240 degrees.
And for the division, you first are going to take r1 and divide it by r2, which in this case are 6 and 2. Take the cosine of theta 1, 160, and subtract the cosine of theta 2. You will then add that to the sine of theta 1 minus the sine of theta 2. And when you simplify the equation, you get 3 cosine of 80 degrees plus I sine of 80 degrees.
Sometimes you're presented with equations in radians instead of degrees. In this case, we have z1 equals 8 times the cosine of 3 pi over 4 plus I sine 3 pi over 4. z2 is equal to 4 times the cosine of 5 pi over 3 plus I sine 5 pi over 3. So, to multiply z1 and z2, you still do what you did before with the r's. You just multiply 8 times 4. But now, since the two cosine numbers don't have the same denominator, you have to give them a common denominator so that you can add the numerators. In this case, 3 pi over 4 equals 9 pi over 12, and 5 pi over 3 equals 20 pi over 12. Now you're ready to add those together. So, when you simplify the equation, 8 times 4 is 32. Now you have cosine of 29 pi over 12 plus I sine 29 pi over 12.
The division for radians is also the same. You still are dividing r1 over r2, and you are subtracting theta 1 by theta 2. Again, you have to make sure the denominators are the same, so 3 pi over 4 is 9 pi over 12, and 5 pi over 3 is 20 pi over 12. When you simplify the whole equation, you end up with 2 times the cosine of negative 11 pi over 12 plus I sine of 11 pi over 12. The sign is not negative because in the unit circle, 11 pi over 12 is located in the second quadrant where sign is always positive.
Now you know how to multiply and divide complex numbers. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoy.
Bye!
You don't wanna end up dead. You do everything shy